Why awakening is the greatest human potential. Buddhist wisdom. What is awakening? In the Nibbanatthattu Sutta, one of the oldest collections preserved in the Buddhist canon, the Buddha defined the element of nibbana with startling simplicity. The destruction of greed, the destruction of hatred, the destruction of delusion. This is called the element of nibbana. Notice the word he chose. Destruction. Not suppression, not management, not keeping it under control. Complete destruction. Like pulling weeds out by the roots, not just trimming the leaves so they look presentable. This is what awakening means at its core. The total uprooting of the forces that create suffering in our lives. But how? How do you destroy something as fundamental as greed, hatred, and delusion? These seem woven into the fabric of human nature itself. The Buddha's answer comes from the Anattalakkana Sutta. Here, he said, when you clearly see the arising and passing away of the five aggregates, seeing that they are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and without a permanent self, this leads to awakening. The five aggregates aren't mystical concepts. They're the basic components of every moment of your experience. Your body and all its physical sensations. Your feelings, whether something is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Your perceptions, how you recognize and label things. Your mental formations, all your thoughts, emotions, intentions, habits. And consciousness itself, that basic awareness that knows all of this is happening. In other words, everything we think of as me is actually these five constantly changing processes. The practice is to watch them carefully. Really watch them. See how a sensation arises in your body and then passes away. See how a thought appears from nowhere and then dissolves. See how feelings shift and change. How nothing stays the same for even a moment. See how none of these things can give you lasting satisfaction. The pleasure fades. The pain eventually comes. Nothing is permanent. And most importantly, see how none of them contains a permanent, unchanging self that you can point to and say, that's the real me. When you see this deeply enough, when it's not just an idea, but a living reality you're experiencing moment by moment, something fundamental shifts. The greed, the hatred, the delusion that drives suffering, they lose their grip. Not because you're fighting them, but because you've seen through the illusion they were built on. What does someone who has completed this journey actually look like? The texts give us clear markers. The defining characteristic, the one that matters above all others, is what's called asavakaya in Pali. The complete destruction of the mental defilements, those deep patterns that keep us trapped in the cycle of suffering. The Anguttara Nikaya 10.13 describes how, when this happens, the 10 fetters are broken. These are the chains that bind consciousness to suffering. Belief in a permanent self, doubt about the path, attachment to rituals as ends in themselves, sensual craving, ill will, craving for refined states of existence, craving for formless states, conceit, restlessness, and finally ignorance itself. When awakening is complete, these chains are severed. The Majjhima Nikaya 4 and Majjhima Nikaya 36 describe something else that may arise, what are called the three true knowledges, the ability to remember past lives, to see how beings are reborn according to their actions, and most importantly, to know directly that the mental defilements are destroyed. Later texts like the Samannaphala Sutta describe even more abilities that can develop. But here's what the Buddha emphasized again and again. Don't get distracted by the special abilities. Don't make them the goal. What matters is freedom from greed, hatred, and delusion. That's the real transformation. Think of it this way. Imagine you've been carrying a heavy backpack your entire life. You've gotten so used to it that you barely notice it anymore. It's just part of who you are. Then one day you set it down. Suddenly you discover you can run, you can jump, you can move in ways you never could before. But the real gift isn't the running or jumping. The real gift is the absence of that weight. That's what awakening is like. The abilities, if they come, are just side effects. The real transformation is the lightness, the freedom. Why is this our greatest potential? Something happened near the end of Abraham Maslow's life that sheds light on why this matters so much. You probably know about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that famous pyramid with basic survival needs at the bottom, moving up through safety, belonging, and esteem, with self-actualization at the very top. For years, self-actualization was considered the peak of human potential, becoming the fullest, most authentic version of yourself. But in his 1971 book, The Farther Reaches of Human Nature, and as scholar Mark Koltko Rivera documented in 2006, Maslow realized something was missing. He proposed a level above self-actualization that he called self-transcendence. Maslow wrote about how the highest human potential isn't actually about perfecting the self. It's about moving beyond the separate self altogether, experiencing connection with something greater than the individual ego. He found this theme consistently in what he called transcenders, and noted its presence throughout Eastern contemplative traditions. Maslow, a psychologist trained in Western science, had independently discovered what the Buddha taught 2,500 years earlier. The ultimate human potential isn't about becoming a better, more successful, more perfect me. It's about seeing through the illusion of a separate, fixed self altogether. This brings us to one of the most profound and liberating teachings in Buddhism, anatta, or not self. People sometimes hear this and think it means you don't exist in some nihilistic way, like Buddhism is denying your reality. But that's not it at all. You are here, experiencing this moment. The Buddha wasn't denying that. What he said is more subtle and, when deeply understood, profoundly liberating. When you look closely at your actual experience, you can't find anything permanent, unchanging, and independent that constitutes a fixed, inherent self. It's more like a river. The river is constantly flowing, constantly changing, made up of countless streams and tributaries coming together. But we give it a single name, the Mississippi, the Ganges, and we treat it as if it's one fixed thing. We say the river as if it's the same river from moment to moment, year to year. But it's not. It's a continuous process, not a static entity. When you see this deeply enough about yourself, not just as an intellectual idea, but as a living reality, suffering, rooted in the attachment to a solid me, simply falls away. Without that tight grip of self-identification, there's still life, still experience, still engagement with the world. But the suffering that comes from clinging, from defending, from constantly trying to enhance or protect this sense of me, that suffering simply falls away. In the early Pali Suttas, emptiness, sunyata, is primarily presented as the world being empty of self or what belongs to self. This corresponds to the idea of transcending the separate self. Later traditions, particularly Mahayana, further developed the doctrine of the emptiness of all phenomena. This might sound abstract, philosophical, maybe even a bit depressing, but it has the most profound practical implications imaginable. If nothing is fixed, if everything is constantly changing and dependent on conditions, then everything can change. No pattern is permanent. No suffering is forever. No matter how stuck you feel, no matter how hopeless things seem, liberation is always possible. Because the very thing that makes you feel trapped, the sense of a solid, permanent, unchangeable self stuck in solid, permanent, unchangeable circumstances, that's the illusion. When you see through it, freedom becomes possible. The path to awakening. If awakening is our greatest potential, the natural next question arises. How do we actually unlock it? How do we truly destroy greed, hatred, and delusion, and see through the illusion of a separate self? The Buddha didn't just point to the destination. He laid out a clear, practical roadmap for each of us to follow. This path isn't a mystical shortcut, but a systematic journey of cultivation, a gradual transformation from within. Its core foundation is the Noble Eightfold Path, 𝐂𝐸𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿, a comprehensive blueprint for the mind's development. These aren't isolated steps, but interdependent elements, each one reinforcing and deepening the others. It begins with right understanding, samadhi, a correct grasp of the Four Noble Truths: suffering, its origin, its cessation, and the path to its cessation, and the realities of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not-self. Flowing from this understanding, right thought, samma-sankappa, naturally inclines towards renunciation, non-greed, goodwill, non-hatred, and non-harming, non-delusion. The next three elements form the ethical bedrock, or sila, right speech, samavaka, right action, sammakamanta, and right livelihood, samma-ajiva. These create a clean, supportive environment for the mind, steering us away from actions that cause suffering for ourselves and others. With this ethical foundation, right effort, samma-vayama, is the persistent exertion to prevent unwholesome states from arising, to abandon those that have arisen, to develop wholesome states that haven't arisen, and to maintain those that have. Central to the practical application of this path are right mindfulness, sammasati, and right concentration, sammasamadhi. Right mindfulness is the extraordinarily vital element, the ability to maintain vigilant attention to what is happening in the present moment, in the body, feelings, mind, and mental phenomena, without judgment or reaction. This is the very tool we use to watch the five aggregates, seeing their arising, ceasing, and their impermanent nature. Building upon this, right concentration is the capacity to unify the mind on a single object, developing profound states of meditative absorption, jhanas, making the mind stable, luminous, and ready for the breakthrough of insight. These two elements, right mindfulness and right concentration, guide us deep into meditation, where the direct transformation takes place. This practice often involves two aspects: calm abiding, samatha, where we focus on a single object, often the breath, to quiet the mind, reduce distraction, and build sustained attention, much like stilling the surface of a lake to see clearly to its depths. Building upon this stability, insight meditation, vipassana, is the direct method for cultivating insight, for seeing clearly, vipassana, the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not-self nature of all phenomena. This is where the destruction of greed, hatred, and delusion truly happens. When a sensation, a thought, an emotion arises, we simply observe it, watching it appear and disappear, seeing that it has no fixed self-nature, that it's not mine or me. In this continuous process, clinging gradually loosens its grip. The path to awakening demands perseverance, continuous mindfulness, and the courage to face the deepest layers of the mind. It is a gradual process, but each step taken brings a small liberation, a progressively deeper sense of ease and freedom. The awakened life. Having explored what awakening is and the path to cultivate it, the final, perhaps most crucial question arises. What does an awakened person's life actually look like? Does awakening mean retreating from the world, living apart from others? Or is it a profound transformation in how we engage with life itself? The Buddha, after his awakening, spent 45 years traveling and teaching. This alone tells us that awakening isn't an escape from life, but rather a way of participating in it with an entirely different state of mind. It's living fully present, yet unburdened. When the illusion of a separate, fixed self dissolves, the rigid boundaries between oneself and others soften. The insight into not-self and emptiness naturally gives rise to boundless compassion and loving kindness. This isn't something one has to strive to produce. It's the spontaneous outpouring of a mind freed from the shackles of greed, hatred, and delusion. The four immeasurable states of mind: loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity become the natural expressions of such a heart. They are not merely ideals, but the very fabric of a liberated mind, extending unconditionally to all beings. An awakened person is not devoid of emotions, nor are they passive. Instead, awakened wisdom allows one to act with profound clarity, precision, and effectiveness. Instead of reacting habitually, driven by desires or fears, an awakened individual responds to every situation with skillful means, deep compassion, and a clear understanding of the impermanent nature of all things. They are no longer swept up in cycles of argument or resentment. They don't cling to success or fear failure, because they comprehend that all experiences are transient. Their engagement with life is total, but without attachment. Awakening isn't merely a personal freedom, it also becomes a powerful force for good in the world. Those who walk the path of awakening, or have reached its completion, don't just seek liberation for themselves. They bring their light of wisdom and compassion to benefit all beings. The Bodhisattva ideal, especially emphasized in Mahayana Buddhism, exemplifies this. A being who, having achieved profound insight, chooses to remain in the cycle of existence to help all others find their own liberation. This is the ultimate expression of compassion, a vision that extends far beyond individual benefit to embrace the entire universe. Figures like the Dalai Lama or Thich Nhat Hanh serve as living examples of how awakened wisdom can be applied to pressing global issues like peace, social justice, and environmental care. Ultimately, awakening is an invitation to live the most complete, authentic, and meaningful life possible. It is not just freedom from personal suffering, but also the freedom to love, to serve, and to radiate wisdom and compassion in every moment of existence. This is the greatest, most profound potential that each human being can unlock.